A while back, I made a response to Progressive Sam Seder on the baby formula shortage that was happening in America, but it was covered by much bigger progressive outlets, such as the Young Turks. I generally don't make response videos to them because I consider them low-hanging fruit in stark contrast to people like Kyle Kulinski and Sam Seder. Besides, unlike American baby formula, there is no shortage of responses to the network, and for good reason. But not all of their videos can be covered by the internet, and that's where I come in.
There has been a shortage of baby formula, and people are kind of questioning why that's the case. And it turns out corporate greed has a lot to do with it. In fact, there was a massive recall of baby formula because it was making babies sick. As many as 4 babies were hospitalized. 2 of them died as a result of this poisonous baby formula that was being produced by Abbott Nutrition, the maker of Similac and other popular formula brands. Now, turns out that they had a machine that wasn't functioning properly. That was leading to the spread of bacteria. It led to an outbreak of Chronobacter among babies, and that's why they had to do the recall.
This is true, at least mostly. The shortage of baby formula was triggered by the shutdown of an Abbott Nutrition plant in Sturgis. The reason the recall was massive was due to Abbott having a 40% company market share and the plant controlling 1/5 of the nation's supply. With the size of the recall, American households have struggled to find infant formula to the point that at the time of the article, 4 infants were unfortunately hospitalized with 2 already dead. This is a symptom of a much larger problem where 4 companies that include Abbott and Mead Johnson control roughly 90% of the infant formula market, a very concentrated market with high monopoly power. So when one of the large baby formula companies fail, a shortage like this comes about. But is it just corporate greed, monopolies, and capitalism that created this? Well, let's see. Now, there was also a whistleblower who revealed some of the questionable practices at Abbott.
Information in the confidential whistleblower document was provided by a former employee who worked in the production plant in quality systems. So he's in quality systems. This is a facility in Sturgis, Michigan, and it's part of Abbott's nutritional division. Now, here's what they found, okay? Here's what he blew the whistle on. For several years, some of the equipment associated with the drying process at the Sturgis site was failing and in need of repair. As a result, a number of product flow pipes were pitting and leaving pinholes. This allowed bacteria to enter the system and at times led to bacteria not being adequately cleaned out in clean on place washes. This in turn caused product flowing through the pipes to pick up the bacteria that was trapped in the defective pipe. So they have this malfunctioning machine, this machine that has some pretty terrible flaws that's leading to the product being tainted with bacteria. And again, they decided to just leave it alone, not do anything about it, because it would require investing some money back into the company, repairing that machinery or replacing that machinery. That's what's going on.
Yeah, so now Republicans all over the place, and you turn on any media and you'll see it, are blaming Joe Biden and his administration for the shortage. But wait a minute, how could the administration have anything to do with the shortage when the reason is crystal clear in this case? One of the companies was producing baby formula that killed babies, so they had to shut down the factory. That's what's causing the shortage. There's absolutely no dispute over that. And they're going, ha, it's Biden. And what is Biden the schmuck doing? As usual, just eating it, right? It's not quite really our fault. No, you counterattack, you moron. You say, hey, this is why we need regulation. The Republicans say we don't need any regulation, and now your babies are dead because of the Republicans. Oh my God, you'd have to criticize Republicans, Joe. Joe, they're the other goddamn party, okay?
The whistleblower report is harrowing, but I doubt Abbott's malfeasance is attributable to a lack of regulation, but due to a government nutrition program called Women, Infants and Children, or WIC for short. More than half of American infant formula is through WIC, with only 2 companies serving nearly 90% of infants. These companies actually bid for the contracts, with the lowest bidder getting the contracts. This leads to massive cost savings for the taxpayer, but at the cost of both Abbott and Mead Johnson serving at least 40% of infants each. It's interesting that Anna mentions corporate greed, because the cost savings force these companies to lose money on formula sold through WIC. So why do these companies participate in the WIC programs in the first place? Well, being a WIC provider brings a whole list of indirect economic benefits, such as spillovers, and this may have led to the creation of the baby formula monopolies. The monopoly point is important here, as recalls are common but don't cause shortages. But you may ask, wouldn't deregulation create these massive monopolies instead of beneficial government programs that help ordinary people? Well, the concern is understandable, as there is dispute as to whether these contracts led to the monopolies. But one study may put this question to rest. A USDA study implies that the WIC program is the cause of the high market shares of baby formula companies. Now, the study has a few limitations, as it focused only on supermarkets instead of other types of stores, and the data may not be nationally representative. Nevertheless, 63% of baby formula sales were in supermarkets, and the characteristics of the sample were similar to the national infant formula market. As mentioned before, there are a multitude of advantages to being a WIC supplier. First of all, a successful bid for the WIC contract has spillover effects via increased sales for non-WIC baby formula products. And the reasons for this particular advantage is vast and taps into a bit of behavioral economics. This can happen because retailers give more shelf space to the WIC firm, better product placement from retailers, recommendations of the WIC product by hospitals and physicians, non-WIC consumers being reassured that the product is approved by the government via WIC, existing WIC participants buying more baby formula out of pocket, brand loyalty, recommendations by WIC participants, and feeding the same WIC brand of toddler formula. When WIC contracts switch between companies, the successful companies see their market shares significantly rise, and this is true for California and all other American states. Now on average, how significant of a market share gain does a baby formula company receive from landing these contracts? 10%? 20%? 30%? 40%? 50%? Or even 60%? Well, it's none of those. When looking at the years when there is a change in the WIC provider, the company who gained the WIC contract received on average 74% in market share per state, while the manufacturer who lost the contract also lost a market share of 73% on average. Firms who never held the contract seem to have an insignificant change of 1%. Of course, this change obviously happens if you gained the contract rather than renewing your existing WIC contract, and relative price changes of competing retailers do not seem to be contributing to this massive change. Furthermore, WIC accounted for 84% of all milk-based formula sold by the three top companies. When you combine the findings of the data along with 50% baby formula consumption being WIC, and two companies each having nearly half of WIC contracts, we see that both Abbott and Mead Johnson each have 20% of US infant formula sales backing them, leading to their large market shares with the government's endorsement. Hence, the WIC contracts, a government program, were responsible for this shortage despite corporate greed being more of a direct trigger in this crisis.
No, Cenk, it's worse than that. Let's call a spade, okay? Let's call it like it really is. Because I think that it's a huge mistake to assume that the Democratic Party is any different from the Republican Party in regard to wanting to regulate corporations. It is Joe Biden who told his Wall Street donors during the Democratic primaries that nothing will fundamentally change, and he meant it. He doesn't believe in regulations, which is why, I mean, look, two things would need to happen, Cenk, okay? He would need to, A, wake up from his daily nap to actually be a president for once in his life. And two, he would need to, yes, you're right, fight back against Republicans, but he would have to fight back against Republicans if he disagrees with them. He doesn't disagree with them, okay? The toothless FDA is toothless precisely because we have two political parties who enable what we're seeing right now. Don't get it twisted.
100%. And the job of the mainstream media is to gaslight you into thinking that somebody's doing something about it. They're not doing a goddamn thing about it.
Well, Biden may have told his Wall Street donors that nothing will change because businesses like stability, since it makes their investments less risky. But the current business environment isn't exactly averse to regulations. In fact, sometimes they thrive from regulations, as we have seen from the WIC contracts. Biden is quite a suck-up for over-regulation. And it's funny that you talk about how both American parties are the same, since in a way you might be right, but commitments to deregulation aren't bipartisan. Instead, the opposite may be more true. At high volumes, a tax on baby formula imports or tariffs can exceed 17%, and when Trump was president, the US entered into a new North American trade agreement that actively discouraged formula imports from Canada. With regulation from the Dems and isolationist protectionist measures from the Republicans, Americans can truly come together to screw themselves and their babies, while also helping corporations under the so-called cover of helping the little guy.
They just ship it out to your kids. Your kids get a contaminated batch, they're gonna die. Well, actually a couple of them did. By the way, where's the pro-life movement? Shouldn't the pro-life movement be livid about these baby killers? And say, God damn it, we need regulation to protect our babies from these corporate monsters who kill them for profit. Oh, nowhere to be found.
Profit over lives. Profit over lives. Profit over lives. We see it happen over and over and over again with the right wing. They love protecting lives unless their campaign coffers, need that extra funding, or they can, increase their own bottom line, whatever it is. That's who they are. That's who they really are.
Cenk never fails to be a comedian, intentionally or not. I have shown that the WIC contracts have led to a 74% rise in market share for the company who gets them, which increases their monopoly power, reducing the industry's ability to provide the necessary baby formula for vulnerable families. According to Cenk, being against the WIC contract would be the pro-life position, since removing it would have removed the high market concentration within the industry and prevented the deaths of 2 babies. It appears being against government programs is the pro-life position. After all, welfare may be the true baby killer in all of this.
And if I told you the whole thing, it'd take up the rest of the show, but I'll give you one last one. The FDA is coming to regulate, and so they go to great lengths, according to the whistleblower, to trick the FDA. And then they do strategy meetings about how to trick the FDA to make sure they don't find the bacteria. Afterwards, they celebrate once they have tricked the FDA, and they go, I can't believe they didn't catch the bacteria. It's going into the kids. It endangers their life. But for just a little bit extra profit, we tricked the regulators. Now we can go back to making money by sending this poison into people's babies. It's literally meant for babies. Now, if there was anyone that was actually looking out for you in the government, and that's what the government's supposed to do, it's supposed to protect you, cops, military, and yes, regulation, right? But there is no one in government who's here to help you. Biden isn't gonna do it. Democrats wouldn't hold corporations accountable if their life depended, or if your kid's life depended on it. You think the Republicans would? No, the Republicans love it. They aid and abet this. So, progressives would, but we're nowhere near power. It's a regulation, it's a regulation, it's a regulation.
Are you sure, Cenk, that the baby formula industry needs more regulation, even though what they did was already illegal, and the FDA were incompetent in enforcing said regulations? Well, I'm gonna make you eat those words. Though, if the memes and the advertising of my video is to be believed, you may literally do that. Regardless, what is not known, excluding WIC contracts, is that regulations have actually contributed massively to domestic monopolies within the baby formula market. The FDA has had restrictive requirements for importing foreign baby formula to the US. This includes their tough labeling and nutritional requirements and preventing European formula products from being sold even when those products meet FDA standards. One study found that European formula is even better than the US, with apparently better common sense regulation. Other notorious regulations are a 90-day waiting period before any new infant formula could be introduced into interstate commerce. In contrast to the current shortage, Europe has a consistent formula surplus, and it's no surprise why. Besides, enforcing these regulations are a whole other problem. Desperate parents may try to use third-party websites that directly sell infant formula, including European ones, but the FDA shuts these websites down and even sees shipments at the border or through border agencies just because of shipping concerns. America's protectionist trade policy has been a boon for companies like Abbott. Reducing America's trade for an essential good reduces the available supply and makes these goods vulnerable to domestic supply-side shocks and recalls, as there is no international alternative to help close the supply gap. I want common sense regulation, but I also want less regulation, and this dogmatic need to regulate everything, regardless of the consequences, will create problems like the baby formula shortage.
Okay,
and I got to show you guys the numbers. I have to show you because this is what we're talking about. I mean, I don't know how much it would cost to fix that machine that poisoned babies, but this is what they decided to spend their money on instead. Let's take a look at graphic 8 here. It shows you corporate stock buybacks. It's broken down by quarter. In the quarter ending March 31st, 2022, they spent $2.3 billion on corporate stock buybacks. In the quarter ending December 31st, 2021, $974 million. I mean, you see the numbers there. Hundreds of millions of dollars they spend every quarter on corporate stock buybacks. But don't worry, they make sure to pay their shareholders dividends in addition to that, right? Corporate stock buybacks, you just buy shares of your own company's stock that artificially inflates the value of the shares. Executives are paid that way. And if the share increases in value, that means that all of a sudden they're richer. That's why they do it. So it's all about shareholder capitalism. It's all about making sure they look out for the people who do what? They just invest their money in the corporation, sit on their ass and do nothing else.
Yeah.
And all they care about is the value of the shares going up? Am I getting my dividends? Yeah, babies are dying, but who cares? Who cares?
While engaging in stock buybacks without investing to fix a machine is a horrible decision on the part of Abbott, I don't think we can place blame on stock buybacks for this crisis. I mean, I have mentioned before how the WIC contracts and protectionist measures increased the monopoly power of Abbott, which led to this whole crisis in the first place. I have been doing a ton of research on stock buybacks in preparation for a big video, and while I can't provide an accurate assessment for now, from what I gathered, it appears that stock buybacks are not very correlated with investments. Older companies who have less of a propensity to invest or have beneficial research and development projects like Abbott would be better served in buying back their own stock in order to provide that money back to shareholders. This is because the investments of older companies are less successful, so shareholders can use their own money to spend on more profitable projects within younger companies. Again, take what I said with a grain of salt, since I am still doing my research. Also, Abbott can still fix the machines, which isn't a significant R&D investment, while still engaging in stock buybacks. But the stock buyback point is irrelevant in the context of the baby formula shortage. Well, I hope you're all satisfied with my response. If you want more Young Turks or online progressive responses, a friend of mine, Stephen Michael Davis, has released a recent video on them and the IRS, and you can look through my response videos playlist. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give a like and comment as it really helps my video in the YouTube algorithm. And if you like economics and political commentary, consider subscribing. Maybe follow me on my Twitter, and see you later.